Hello. So we are at time. So welcome to the demo. Skabek, I see you have the first item.
Indeed. So I wanted to discuss the remote IP situation a little bit and just showcase what I had found. There was, I think, Amy, it was you that mentioned, do we need to fix this? And I'm like, yes. And Graham's like, no. I'm like, okay, where's the disparity? But here's our log search. This is a type API because that's what's accepting traffic. Remote IP, we see that we're getting external IP addresses. So we know that it works just fine. If we change this to our Git fleet, we'll notice that it shows our internal IP addresses for some of these items, which is not desired. The reason why this is happening is if I go down and I look into the user agent, most of these are going to be coming from GitLab shell. If I go up here, like everything is GitLab shell for all the ones that have the internal IP addresses. So this is not technically our problem. It is technically GitLab shell is not sending us the appropriate IP address. There has been, and I commented on the issue. No, get out of the plant. There is an issue in which Hendrik on the infrastructure team is trying to make changes to GitLab shell such that we proxy appropriate IP address. That Epic is still in progress. So for our use cases and for moving the web migration forward, we're on block for this. So I proceeded to close that issue because it's not something that we could solve. This is something that GitLab shell needs to solve itself, which they probably will because soon they're ridding of OpenSSH in favor of moving to GitLab shell being the daemon itself, which is kind of cool. So I'm eager to see that through. Just time is of the essence, I guess. So any questions regarding remote IP? Chat?
I don't think so. Do you have the issue just to link into the agenda?
Just a question, because I think this sounds familiar, right? We have this since a long time that GitLab shell wasn't able to get the remote IP, right? Even before we switched over to Kubernetes, I think that was always problematic.
It may have been, but it was something that was either unknown or not explored or evaluated when GitLab shell was migrated over.
I think at one point, I think we did something to solve it, maybe a year ago or something. Can't remember the exact details, but I think that was a long-standing issue that we didn't have the remote IP in GitLab shell. Yeah. And
yeah.
You see, okay. But okay, if it's just that one, I think we're not blocked by
so it's
that.
GitLab shell, and right now it's talking to our Git deployment, which it technically shouldn't be. It technically should be speaking to the API. But we'll save that for later. It works. That's what matters.
Great. Nice. Cool. Thanks for investigating that. Cool.
Graham technically did all that work. I just followed up on it.
It all counts.
I'm just making sure he gets the credit. So Nginx and HA proxy, there's two things I want to discuss, but first a little showcasing. I spun up an issue because I wanted to determine why we're getting an imbalance of traffic. So in this chart is the amount of requests that the Nginx ingress pods are receiving for cluster D for the API service. And you can see for the most part, there's like a normal trend line, but then when new pods come on, they'll see an exorbitant amount of requests. And at some point, we'll go back to our normal trend, during a time when we're not scaling, and we'll see another abnormal set of requests. And then sometimes we'll see a few pods up here because there's I don't know if you could see it, but there's a few lines here and a few lines here. So there's multiple pods serving differing amounts of traffic, which is a little weird to me. And I want to try to figure out where this happens. So I create a list of things that we need to look into. We've already determined that this is not specific to a fresh pod. This green line here, in this above chart, there are 3 total misbehaving pods that I've outlined here. One of them is this green one, and we can see for the most part, it's been alive for quite a while. It was misbehaving during this period of time. So it was receiving a lot less requests. So I have no clue why we see this awkward increase here, and then it goes back down to seemingly a normal period, and we see a drop during that time in which this particular pod was misbehaving. The other 2 pods noted what our misbehaviors are like. It starts at around 300 requests and it drops down to, less than 50, comes back up to 300, and the pod gets killed off. Same situation for this one. It starts around 300. It misbehaves for a little bit longer. Maybe that's why this green pod was taking more traffic, because things were being shuffled around to different pods. And then it came back online, and then the pod was killed. So I started looking into this, and I'm still working with GCP support. They responded. I don't fully understand the response just yet, just because I haven't spent enough time thinking about it. But I was looking at HA proxy because that is where our traffic would be originating from. And we do see that there's a rate of connection errors that kind of occurs, but not necessarily during the times in which we're having issues. Like, this is scattered like a little bit. Like, this is when we had the issue with one of those pods. We also had an issue with one of the pods during this time period, another issue with this pods during this time period. So I can't explain these connection errors that are also scattered about. And if you open up this window for a lot larger period of time, we see connection problems quite often. Just go away. Like, if we look at the last 6, okay, never mind. Okay, so there's one spat of errors yesterday, for example. Oh, I can't do one day. So we do see this periodically. Not enough to bring down the backend from what I could tell during my research. So this might just be something that happens often. You'll notice I'm restricting my search down to only the HA proxy instances that are in cluster or zone D. So we do see backend connection errors rarely, but I don't think that's like a good causation. I think it's like the result. During the time in which we are experiencing pod misbehavior, there's nothing wrong with HA proxy. Like, there's a increase in active sessions, but that might be due to the fact that a pod was slow and struggling, so connections were building up. But for the most part, like, this looks okay. Our connection times, they look fine. Like, we see spurt of errors, this kind of alliance similar to with the connection errors to our backends, but I can't see a correlation to this and the Nginx behavioral issues that we see. Same with backend errors. Failed health checks is a little bit more interesting because we fail our health checks quite often. It's actually a little concerning to me. But again, no correlation to Nginx behavior. Like, it happens so frequently, I can't create a correlation, is what I'm trying to say. So then I started looking at network traffic going into the nodes that are running the Nginx ingress pods. And this, I didn't have enough time before I ended my day yesterday, but there's a few things that make this a little difficult to look at. One, the new nodes are going to be receiving traffic because they're downloading a lot of images from the internets in order to accomplish their job, which is starting up our various pods. So some of this is going to be inflated. It's not specific to Nginx, but it's going to be all pieces of network traffic. So I made a note down here that I want to see if I can't find the actual Calico network interface and see if I can't figure out if there's any behavior specific to that. But I have to hope I could find that information. I don't know if I can yet or not. But looking at specifically the Ethernet device, we can see traffic builds up. And then during the time in which that pod is experiencing behavioral issues, traffic kind of drops. The amount of bandwidth drops significantly. And like for this pod that was misbehaving here, the red line, it looks like it was failing twice, but I couldn't determine that. I found it coincidental that this other node was showing a similar drop in network traffic, but that one was failing over here in the 1400 range, in which we see like a drop, but like I don't know if that's just a drop in traffic because you know it's wiggly all the way across. So like I can't glean too much from this information at all. So at this point, I cannot yet determine. There's still more investigation that I want to try to accomplish to figure out where this imbalance of traffic is occurring from. Google has responded to my question about how we have this configured, but I still need to like read through it and try to make sense of it.
So just to summarize, cluster D. So is cluster D the one we're not making any changes to? We're going to keep that as the one to try and find the root cause.
At this moment in time, our mitigation, maybe I should catch all of us up here. So the mitigation efforts that we decided upon was to increase the amount of ephemeral ports across all clusters. And we did decide to push that in cluster D as well. So, so far, I haven't seen any occurrences of this issue today.
Okay,
I would need to
that's
research
good, right?
that. Not research, but like search again. But yeah, that's the good sign. I would like to leave it in place a little bit longer, just to, you know, let it sit and bake for a little bit. Plus, you know, I want to make sure that we're not. I just want to make sure that things are fine.
Yeah, for sure. Is there a way to like map like site traffic against any of those, like, or I guess other clusters? Like, are we still seeing that D is receiving more traffic than like?
Oh no. So the reason I was segregating cluster D was just because I wanted to make sure we had a place where if we put a mitigation factor in place, I wanted to have a place where we could still test to make sure that that mitigation was or was not going to help us. Because when we first were discussing this, we didn't know if this was a node spinning up situation, like a problem with a node spinning up and pods coming online at the same time, causing a race condition in some way, shape, or form. That has since been ruled out. So we wanted to leave cluster D alone. That way we had the ability to say, hey, this is still occurring. But this is not occurring on, say, cluster B, where that mitigation of slowing down the pods was pushed into place. But we ruled that out. Like we saw in the network traffic graph I was just showing, we had a pod that was living for a very long period of time that suffered this problem. So it's not specific to pods and nodes coming online. We don't yet know the exact root cause. That's why I'm chasing this traffic imbalance, because I wonder if something else is happening, which is causing pods to like be overburdened, which is leading to port exhaustion.
Skarbek, looking at your first Thanos graph, when I include nodes into the summary, it looks like that the
Could you share your screen?
Yeah, sure. So I just looking at this metric you showed before, and I added a node into that. I'm not sure if you mentioned this before, but if I look at the different lines here, it appears that it's always the same node, right? So it's stable for one node, like all the pods on the same node here. The same as here, it's all on the same node, different pods.
Yeah.
So it seems that the imbalance seems to be per node, right? So for one node, we get exactly this amount of requests, while for another node, we get this amount of requests here. So it seems that different nodes just seem to be able to take different amounts of traffic per pod. At least
which that in itself is a little bizarre. So I want to figure out why that would be happening. If our mitigation is working, I think that unblocks us, even though it looks like we're trying to remove the Nginx, which we'll get to in our discussion item. But it would be good to figure out why this is happening, just so that we have a full understanding as to what the network flow is like between HA proxy and Nginx.
Yeah. I'm not sure what this is telling us, but different nodes seem to be the cause of different traffic patterns here.
That's an interesting chart.
Yeah, but if I mix it with pods, it's even better visible, I think. So like as before.
Did it update?
Not yet.
I don't think it hit the, yeah.
Pod maybe instead of pods, okay.
Oh. There we go.
Yeah.
So maybe we've been looking at this all wrong. So maybe because we've been focusing on the pods, it's not the pods that are seeing the imbalance, it's the nodes. And they're seeing an imbalance because the traffic is being routed evenly across the nodes. But that means the pods themselves will be receiving an imbalance because there might only be one pod on that node versus 4 on another node, for example. Like that other chart you just showed kind of outlines that implicitly.
Yeah. Maybe if Nginx is just routing round robin between nodes, and each node has a, I don't know, a node specific IP which is shared by all the pods on the node. I'm not sure how this is working, but that would explain that if a node only has one single pod, that no, that wouldn't explain it. But it would explain that the one pod would get more requests because each node gets maybe the same amount of requests.
Exactly.
But if there's just one pod on it, then it will get a lot of requests. If there are 3 pods on it, it will just
precisely
less.
So
and you see this.
I think what's happening is HA proxy is sending traffic to the Google load balancer. And that Google load balancer is going to send the traffic to all the nodes in which it knows about that are healthy and are running the Nginx ingress pod. If there's only one running on that one node, well, that node is going to see the same amount of traffic the other nodes are, but that node only has one pod. So it's just going to be blasted with a lot of requests unnecessarily. So that's probably exactly why this situation is happening.
Yeah.
We just need to figure out if there's any tuning involved that we could adjust that situation. And that's what our last conversation with Google is trying to figure out how we can resolve. Like this chart right here shows it perfectly. Anytime you see a new line pop up, the traffic drops.
Yeah. And each node seems to get the same traffic.
Spread out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So per node, it's okay. All get the same traffic, but per pod, it's looking totally different because of different amount of pods on the nodes. And because we only fit a few pods on each node, there's a huge difference.
Yep.
Yeah.
Man, I wish I looked at this chart a long time ago.
How do pods get assigned to nodes? Like, how do we end up with one node having 3 pods and one node having 1 pod?
Sometimes when we scale up, we can't fit any more pods on a given node. And that will tell GKE, hey, we can't schedule this pod. We need to scale up. So GKE will scale up a node. Since we only requested one extra pod by chance,
doesn't rebalance
that new pod goes to that one node.
I see.
Yeah.
So
and
it's
Kubernetes
like we had
is
3
not going
and
to
now we
rebalance
need to go
everything.
bigger. And I see. Okay. Interesting. Yeah. Okay.
So I think this remediation, I mean, so far looks like it's serving its purpose. I think it would still be wise to figure out if there's a way we could better balance this traffic. That way we're not.
Ironically, this isn't a solution. This is not a technical solution. This is a theoretical solution. A theoretical solution is when this happens, you need to kill a pod, right? Like an older pod, and a new one would spin up in a newer node, right? And rebalance it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Interesting.
But that Kubernetes is not going to do that by default. So I think something that we could probably do is see if there's any tuning we could accomplish at the Google load balancer. And something that I'm trying to wrap my head around is we have the service IP and HA proxy is external to our clusters. I think if that were not the case, like if HA proxy was inside of our clusters, they would be using the service IP that's internal to the cluster. That way kube proxy is the only thing that's involved. We're not going outside to the Google load balancer, which is going to direct traffic to a specific set of nodes, which is, I think, currently happening today. So if this mitigation turns out to be useful, the only thing I'm concerned about is potentially overloading a single pod for a period of time, which would slow down a set of requests for a period of time. So I think it would be wise for me to, one, continue down the investigation of, is there anything we can do with balancing the traffic better? and also validating, are we suffering because this one pod saw a tremendous amount of requests versus the others not doing the same? Like, we're stressing out these pods unnecessarily. Is that a problem?
Yeah, I think that would be a really good one to know. Like, I know we've talked about it theoretically having problems, and probably are seeing more with like web if we had Nginx in place. But yeah, it'd be good to know what that actually, what in real terms that might mean.
Yep.
I think the easier solution would be that we would route per pod, right? So that it's distributed evenly. But another thing which we were considering because of tuning for resource usage is if we would end up with a solution where one pod fits on one node, that problem would go away, right? Or if we would fit a lot of pods on each node, then it would be mitigated because it wouldn't be such a big difference anymore. But being able to route on number of pods, that would be the best thing, yeah.
There's probably some resource tuning we could continue with Nginx to see if we can't not squeeze more performance, but maybe like lessen the amount of Nginx controllers we run potentially, but I'm not entirely sure just yet. So I'm going to keep working on that one issue.
Cool. That sounds good. Great. Nice progress.
I brought it up because Henry just, kind of shined a spotlight on something that's quite important. So
yeah, super good. And that's perfect, like example of great demoing, right? Like, nice. Cool. Well, let's see how we go and see if this gives us more stuff. But yeah, great progress.
All right, cool. For the discussion items, I asked when the APEC demo was because I thought I was going to have a recording this morning. I guess I looked at my calendar incorrectly, so resolved.
Yes, so yeah, it's tomorrow. So the APEC ones we've switched onto a fortnightly schedule. So we have one tomorrow to follow on from here.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, I was hoping to have something fun from Graham last night, but
although it's well timed because actually he was quite blocked. So actually, I think from what he's been working on, this scheduling is going to end up being quite effective.
Yep. All right. Oh, I didn't link my issue to the Epic. That's unfortunate. I just want to have a quick discussion about our priorities for the web migration and make sure everyone's on the same page, because I know the Nginx ingress came up as something that was questioned in regards to our reference architecture.
Yes.
But it sounds like we're going to push forward with that.
We're going to try. So I chatted with Graham this morning, and so I think the state we're in is probably not too dissimilar from where we were last week, to be honest, which is it will be a great thing if we can actually solve this Nginx problem, or at least understand what's happening there. As it stands right now, Graham is confident that actually it's not offering us anything additional in the web, but we will evaluate that. So what Graham would like to do is roll out to Canary without Nginx. It is all wired up though. So if we see any problems and we think they're Nginx related, we can just change settings in HA proxy so that we bring Nginx back in. So it's pretty low risk. And certainly at the beginning, when we're going with Canary with like super small amounts of traffic, it seems safe enough to see. And what we should see is that Cloudflare is handling the proxy buffering and all of those things. Now, the benefits of not having Nginx are we've removed some complexity, like it's a way simpler setup. And if if Nginx is causing kind of instabilities, or we don't get to the bottom of why it's causing them, then we've kind of eliminated that. Now, the only downside is there is a potential, like Graham's saying, there's a potentially small performance impact, but we can certainly see that as we start rolling out, like if we certainly on Canary, if we start to see things, we can reevaluate. So I think we're at a good stage right now to do the initial test without Nginx. And then as we so Graham's kind of hoping that we might be able to get like a small bit of traffic this week. We could dial it back down again over the weekend and then go properly next week. But if we see issues, we can certainly reconsider that decision.
Okay, so I agree with all that. I see that we still have the issue for auditing the configuration still as a work in progress. And I know Graham has been working on that because I saw a few updates regarding the production cluster. I don't recall if he's opened any merge requests to resolve any findings yet at this moment.
I'm not sure, but he shared these 3 change. He had trouble getting approvals during his day.
I did see he's got a few change requests open.
There are MRs.
Okay, so one of them is a configuration change. Okay, so I'll see if I can't roll that out today.
Perfect, that'd be great. And then yeah, one of them's like so yeah, I think he's looking for approvals. And if we feel comfortable rolling anything out, we can. We should. If you don't and you just want to approve it, he is happy to roll it out in his day. Be great to get all those 3 like so that we can try and get those into production if possible before the demo tomorrow. Yep. And then if we can, Graham's going to try and demo turning on Canary traffic in that demo.
So we keep talking about pushing traffic into Canary. When are we going to complete the readiness reviews? Because I haven't pulled that work and Graham hasn't either.
Which issue, sorry?
The readiness reviews.
Oh, the readiness reviews. I think we're probably okay for now to put a little bit. Well, I mean, I guess I was thinking we put a small bit of traffic on Canary and then do the readiness reviews.
Okay.
Like, you know, we can certainly. Like we should definitely do them before we put a big load on, but I'm fine for us to test them out. Okay. I suppose
just making sure we haven't forgotten about.
Yeah, no, we haven't forgotten those. That's for sure. One thing we actually maybe have forgotten though is this temp directory.
I'm working on that. We just got the change out to staging. Graham pushed it out overnight into our non-prod environments. Great. So my goal today is to finish that issue up today, or at least get a merge request out and get that pushed out. I've not forgotten about that. Great. It's on my to-do list.
Perfect. Cool. Yeah, so I think what we'll try and do like this week is just literally get a small bit in Canary, turn it all back down. Next week, make sure we have everything ticked off and checked, and then and then see if we're ready to go properly.
Excellent. I feel like we're close.
I
think this is going decently smoothly.
It's going very smoothly.
Like, despite the fact that we've had these like the Nginx issue popping up, like aside from that, like I think this is going pretty well.
It's going really well, yeah, which is great news. Super happy. So one thing about the Nginx stuff actually that Graham and I had chatted about this morning. So the reference architecture stuff is like obviously totally relevant to all of this. What I think we'll do, or we can sort of review in the future, like after or as we go through web and after web, is where we want to go. So I know Jason was talking about kind of like the future stuff and changes going into HA proxy and that giving us more stuff. Graham's got a question mark around like, is HA proxy the best like ingress to use with Kubernetes? Where does Nginx fit in and all of these things? So I think we can look to sort of pull all that stuff together, like probably maybe after pages when we've got all these pieces together and actually then like see what sorts. In fact, Graham was mentioning that some of this stuff may be very relevant to pages. We may have to do some extra stuff on routing, so it might fit quite well together.
We need to look into, because I know they asked the question as to what's stuff that we should be thinking about that's important for the distribution team to be picking up. And I mentioned pages, see if there's any problems or issues that they have related to that. And I haven't followed up to see if they've created any issues or anything, but
I'm not aware of any. I think generally, but yeah, I could follow up. I wasn't aware of any. But okay. It is a good point. Well, it is a very good point because yeah, that will be our next one to start thinking through.
Yeah.
And pages is going to be an interesting one, I think, because in lots of contexts, we've talked about pages being really easy and very small and a quick migration. And then in lots of other contexts, we're talking about pages being like very different and the whole kind of routing stuff being potentially harder. So I think it might actually end up being one of these interesting ones. We may find some like new stuff in this, I think.
Yeah. I think it'll be an interesting migration. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes, definitely. It'd be a great one to have completed as well. It's the end of like a long road of pages work, right?
Cool.
Does that answer your question on the web priorities for you, Skarbek?
Yeah, I just wanted to make sure we're on the same page, because I know a lot of conversations is kind of propped up in various places. So
yes, definitely.
If there's any EMRs or so that you want to get reviewed, you can also send some over to me. I think I have some time now at the end of my day, so I can help with that a little bit more.
All right.
Awesome. Great. Is there anything else anyone wants to demo or discuss?
I have a question. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Do you know if there's been any headway on removing Sidekick virtual machines at all?
Oh, there has been a little bit of progress in terms of moving things over, but not a huge amount because of on-call. So I know that is continuing, but it is not complete yet. So last I heard was Q4 of 8 or batch 4 of 8 is in progress or about to start. So it's progressing, but yeah, not there yet.
Okay. Is there anything that we should consider trying to assist with at all? Or
I think I've got it. I think unless, I mean, as long as it's not blocking us on anything, I think I was thinking it's just we want to make sure it completes, right? So
exactly.
Yeah, no, I think they've got a good handle. I think it was literally just a vacation / on-call delay and PCL delays. So I think that's going to move through like decently for the next few weeks.
Yeah, cool. I think that's
super. Sounds good. And yeah, I mean, we're super close on the web stuff. I guess for now, at least, we've got a bit of work to do on readiness reviews, tidying up these things. But yeah, we're not super far. So, let's start thinking about like pages and what we want to do for that one.
Sounds good. Cool.
Fantastic. Right. Great. Thank you very much for the demos and discussions. Like really great progress and super useful today. So good luck with unblocking, diagnosing Nginx, should I say. All right. Thanks, everyone. Speak soon.
Thank you much. Have a good one.
Bye.